Greetings to all. In this session, we are going to see servlets in Java and Crisp. Introduction to web and HTTP, introduction to servlet architecture, steps to create servlet are the concepts we are going to see in Java servlets. Now, introduction to web. Web is basically a system of internet servers that supports formatted documents. The documents are formatted using a markup language called HTML, that is Hypertext Markup Language, that supports links to other documents like graphics, audio, and video files. Basically, web consists of billions of clients and servers connected through wires and wireless network. First, web clients make requests to a web server. Then, the web server receives the request, finds the resource, and returns the response to the client. When a server answers a request, it usually sends some type of content to the client. Then the client uses a web browser to send a request to the server. The server often sends a response back to the browser with a set of instructions written in HTML. All the browsers know how to display the HTML pages to the client. Basically, this is all about the back-end working of the www. Let us understand the connectivity between web and HTTP. A website is a collection of static files, that is web pages, such as HTML pages, images, graphics, etc. A web application is a website with a dynamic functionality on the server. Google, Facebook, Twitter are examples of web application. So, let us understand the link between the web and HTTP. HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a protocol that clients and servers on the web to communicate. It is similar to the internet protocol such as SMTP and FTP. It is a stateless protocol. It supports only one request per connection. This means that with HTTP, the clients connect to the server and to send one request and then disconnect. This mechanism allows more users to connect to a given server over a period of time. The client sends an HTTP request and the server answers with an HTML page to the client using HTTP. Now, with the help of the below table, let us understand the difference between get and post methods of HTTP. Get method. In this method, data is sent in the header body. Post method, the data is sent in the request body. In the case of get method, it is restricted to limited data transfer. But in the case of post method, it supports large amount of data transfer. Get is not secure, but post is completely secure. Get can be bookmarked, but post cannot be bookmarked. So, Java servlets. Introduction to servlets. A servlet is a Java programming language class that is used to extend the capabilities of servers that host applications accessed by means of a request-response programming model. Although servlets can respond to any type of request, they are commonly used to extend applications hosted by web server. It is also a web component that is deployed on the server to create a dynamic web page. See, from the figure, you can see as client sends a request to the server and the server generates the response, analyzes it and sends the response to the client. Before going in depth into the servlet, let us see the technology used before the servlet. What is the technology used here is the CGI, that is Common Gateway Interface. It is a standard way of a web server to pass a user request to an application program and receives the response to forward to the user. When the user requests a web page, the server sends back the requested page. However, when a user fills out a form on the web page and sends it, it is processed by an application program. Then the web server typically passes the form information to a small application program. This program processes the data and sends back a confirmation message. This process of passing data back and forth between the server and the application is called the Common Gateway Interface. It is a part of the web's hypertext transfer protocol. Now let us see Java Servlet, that is Java Servlet architecture. The architecture here discusses the communication interface, protocol used, requirements of client and server, the programming with the languages and the software involved. Basically, it performs the some of the tasks. That is, it reads the explicit data sent by the clients. This data can include an HTML form on a web page, an applet, or a custom HTTP client program. It also reads implicit HTTP request data sent by the client. This can include cookies, media types, compression scheme, the browser understand, and so forth. After that, the servlet processes the data and generate the results. This process may require after communicating to a database, executing an RMI, invoking a web server, or computing the response directly. After processing it, it sends the explicit data, that is the documents, to the clients. This document can be sent in variety of formats including text, binary, that is GIF images, or Excel formats. Finally, it also sends the implicit HTTP response to the client. This includes telling the browser that what type of document is being written. Now let us understand the various methods of the lifecycle of servlet. The servlet lifecycle may include the following 4 stages: loading a servlet, initializing the servlet, request handling, destroying the servlet. First, when the web server, that is we are using Apache Tomcat, starts up, the servlet container deploy and loads all the servlets. The servlet is initialized by calling the init method. The servlet init method is called by the servlet container to indicate that this servlet instance is initiated successfully and is about to put into service. Next, the servlet then calls the service method to process a client request. This method is invoked to inform the servlet about the client request. The next one, the servlet is terminated by calling the destroy method. The destroy method runs only once during the lifetime of the servlet and signals the end of this servlet instance. Init and destroy methods are called only once. Finally, a servlet is garbage collected by the garbage collector of the JVM, that is Java Virtual Machine. So this concludes the life cycle of a servlet. Steps to create a Java servlet: create a directory structure, create a servlet, compile the servlet, add mappings to the web.xml file, start the server and deploy the project, access the servlet. The servlet example can be created by 3 ways: by implementing servlet interface, by inheriting generic servlet class, or by inheriting HTTP servlet class. Here we are going to use Apache Tomcat server in this example. The steps are: creating a directory structure, create a servlet, compile the servlet, deployment descriptor, create a deployment descriptor, start the server and deploy the project, access the servlet. Create a data structure, directory structure. The directory structure defines that where to put the different types of files so that the web container may get the information and respond to the client. Create a servlet. There are three ways to create the servlet. By implementing the servlet interface, by inheriting the generic servlet class, by inheriting the HTTP servlet class. This is the demo program for creating a Java servlet. In this program itself, we have written the HTML file within this and then compile the servlet. For compiling the servlet, jar file is required to be loaded. Different servers provide different jar files. Two ways to load the jar file. Setting a class path, paste the jar file in jre/lib/ext folder. Put the Java file in any folder. After compiling the Java file, paste the class file of servlet in web in classes directory. How to access the servlet? Open the browser and write. For example, HTTP localhost, you all know. Then your program name. You will get the output like this. Welcome to servlet. Thank you. Hope you all understand the servlet concept.